Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Jen. I make videos about my adventures as a 50-something silver and solo traveler. Today's video is about discovering the UNESCO World Heritage Sites that you can explore from your British Isles cruise. The idea of creating an international movement for protecting heritage emerged after World War I. It developed from merging two separate movements, the first one focusing on preservation of cultural sites, and the other one dealing with conservation of nature. The first step a country must take is to make an inventory of its important natural and cultural heritage sites located within its boundaries. Once a nomination file is complete, the World Heritage Center sends it to the appropriate advisory bodies for evaluation. And then once a year, the World Heritage Committee meets to decide which sites will be inscribed on the World Heritage List. To be included on the World Heritage List, sites must be of outstanding universal value and meet at least one of 10 selection criteria. Just to be clear, it's not a list of landmarks or historic or famous places and buildings. There are plenty of those and a whole other video. But these sites are legally protected and acknowledged cultural or natural properties. So, for example, the Louvre in Paris. It is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but the banks of the Seine are. I'm including two French World Heritage Sites in my video today because my itinerary for the British Isles cruise that I took stopped in Laav as the last port before heading home to Southampton. A smart cruiser always arrives at least a day before departure day, so why not arrive 2 or 3 days early? That way you can get some sightseeing in London. Two UNESCO World Heritage Sites are there. The first is Westminster Abbey, Westminster Palace, and St. Margaret's Church. Take the tube, it's easy. You can buy a ticket to visit Westminster Abbey online in advance at westminsterabbey.org for £27. This is 2023. Tickets are limited, so if you just walk up on the day, the wait could be long, and walk-up tickets are not cheaper. There are also third-party guided tours, but they tend to be more expensive. Once inside, at the desk, pay an extra £10 to join a Verger guided tour. You have to ask, it's not well advertised. The Verger guided tour takes you to places inside the Abbey that you can't go by yourself. Plus, there's an expert guide. I got to sit in the choir, which is normally roped off. It's where the posh people sit when there's a grand occasion. I also got to see the tomb of St. Edward the Confessor, also normally roped off. Now, back in the 11th century, there was a monastery dedicated to St. Peter on the site, but in the Middle Tens, King Edward began rebuilding St. Peter's Abbey to provide himself with a royal burial church. And the building was consecrated only a week before Edward's death in 1066. So good timing, Edward. Now you're probably saying to yourself, 1066, didn't something historical happen then? Yes, you're right. After Edward the Confessor died, his cousin Harold grabbed the throne and became king, but poor Edward had been promising the throne to more than one interested party before he died, and William, Duke of Normandy, across the English Channel, said no, and he sailed over there and defeated Harold in the Battle of Hastings, and William is now better known as William the Conqueror. He was crowned there in 1066, and ever since then, it has been the location of coronations of 40 English and British monarchs and a burial site for 18 English, Scottish, and British monarchs. At least 16 royal weddings have occurred in the Abbey since 1100. Laurence Olivier, Stephen Hawking, Charles Dickens, and Rudyard Kipling are all buried there. Shakespeare is not, but there's a memorial to him. Prince William, the future King William V, and Princess Kate were married there, and Queen Elizabeth's state funeral was held there, but she is buried at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. There's a lot to see. Next is the Tower of London. If you want to see the crown jewels, visit here. They've also got the famous beefeaters, or yeoman warders as they prefer to be called, and a flock or an unkindness of famous ravens which guard the tower. Did you know the tower was used as a royal residence for over 500 years, not a prison? It also doubled as the Royal Mint, and kings and queens locked up their valuables in it. It's also been the site of murder, celebration, and intrigue throughout the years, and Queen Anne Boleyn, King Henry VIII's second wife, was executed on the Tower Green and is buried in the chapel there. Henry VI was murdered there, and Edward IV's two young sons disappeared from the tower while under the care of their uncle, who then crowned himself King Richard III. One of the most famous legends of the tower surrounds the ravens, and the story goes that should the ravens leave the tower, both it and the kingdom will fall. The ravens at the tower today are descended from the original raven group and are cared for by a dedicated yeoman warder known as the Raven Master. Just like Westminster Abbey, you can reach the Tower of London easily by tube, train, or bus. Next up, take a day tour to Stonehenge. There are lots of them available, and you can usually visit some other notable sites at the same tour. Stonehenge is a prehistoric monument started around 5,000 years ago. Yeah, I know it looks like a bunch of rocks in a field, but just consider that the original builders didn't even have the wheel yet. And they hauled these stones from hundreds of miles away at a time when humans lived in small hunter-gatherer groups of extended families. This meant they had to get together quite a few groups and agree and cooperate to build this monument over what scientists believe was thousands of years. It's mind-boggling when you think about it, and a great box to check off your bucket list. You'll need to join an excursion to reach this next one. The Giant Causeway is located on the Antrim coast, around 60 miles or 97 kilometers from Belfast. The site itself is free to visit. The visitor center charges a fee. It's a stretch of coastline with perfectly formed hexagonal columns all massed together at the water's edge. An amazing sight to see. It was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1986 and a National Nature Reserve by the Department of the Environment for Northern Ireland in 1987. An entertaining story goes that the Irish giant Finn McCool was challenged to a fight by the Scottish giant Benandonner. Finn accepted the challenge and built the causeway across the North Channel so that the two could meet. In one version of the story, Finn defeats Benandonner. In another, Finn hides from Benandonner when he realizes that his foe is much bigger than he is. Finn's wife disguises Finn as a baby and tucks him in a cradle. When Benandonner sees the size of the quote-unquote baby, he reckons that its father, Finn, must be a giant among giants. He flees back to Scotland in fright, destroying the causeway behind him so that Finn would be unable to chase him down. Across the sea, there are identical basalt columns as part of the same ancient lava flow at Fingal's Cove on the Scottish Isle of Staffa, and it's possible that the story was influenced by this. In any case, box checked. The next site to visit is Neolithic Orkney, and I loved the Rings of Brodgar. The Orkney Islands lie 15 kilometers north of the coast of Scotland. I only visited the Ring of Brodgar when I was there, but there are tour groups that go to all of Neolithic Orkney sites. It's the only major henge and stone circle in Britain, which is an almost perfect circle. Most henges do not contain stone circles. Brodgar is a striking exception, ranking with Avebury and Stonehenge among the greatest of such sites. As a side note, I also toured the Highland Park Whiskey Distillery as part of my tour, and I highly recommend it, even though it's not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but you do get some nice takeaways and get to taste the whiskey. Hey, if this video is leaving you feeling inspired, could you leave me a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe to the channel? It'd help me out a lot. So the word firth means estuary, and so the Firth of Forth is the estuary of several Scottish rivers, including the River Forth. The Forth Bridge is a cantilever railway bridge across the Firth of Forth. It's difficult to say. It was voted Scotland's greatest man-made wonder in 2016. It carries a railway line across the Forth between the villages of South Queensferry and North Queensferry and has a total length of about 8,000 feet or 2,500 meters. Cruise ships usually overnight off North Queensferry, and passengers use a tender to get to the South Queensferry dock, where they can catch a bus or train into Edinburgh, which is only 15 kilometers away. When it opened, it had the longest single cantilever bridge span in the world until 1919, when a longer one opened in Canada. The bridge is still used today and even shows up in pop culture occasionally. It's included in the video game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. The old and new towns of Edinburgh. Between the medieval Old Town and the neoclassical Georgian New Town, more than 75% of all buildings within this World Heritage Site are quote-unquote listed for their architectural or historic importance. In the 1800s, the Old Town was deemed too unfit for purpose, and the New Town was designed and purpose-built in one of the first and finest examples of urban planning in the world. Most tours, whether you've booked an excursion from your cruise ship, a third party, or you're just using the hop-on, hop-off bus, will take you through both old and new towns before dropping you off at the gates of Edinburgh Castle, which again, not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but well worth a visit. Last but not least, here are the 2 World Heritage Sites in France that I'm including in my video. Laav was the last port before Southampton at the end of my cruise and also happens to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a major port city in the Seine Maritime Department in the Normandy region of northern France. It's situated on the right bank of the estuary. Another estuary, I wonder if they call it a firth in France? It's on the estuary of the River Seine. Both the city and port were founded in the 1500s, and after taking heavy bomb damage in World War II, it was almost completely rebuilt, mainly in concrete. I didn't get to wander around Laav, and it's quite an industrial-looking port from the ship, but it might be worth looking around if you're not up for an excursion while you're there. The last World Heritage Site I visited was an excursion to Mont Saint-Michel. I could have gone to Paris as well, and there are a couple UNESCO sites there, but I figured Paris was a trip on its own, so off I went to this stunning 8th century monastery built on a tidal island. It includes its own little village and the bay that surrounds it at high tide, but because of its strategic location, the abbey has also been used as a stronghold and a prison, and recently had its 1,000-year anniversary. It's about a 3-hour bus ride from Laav, but the sight of that mountain with the abbey on top just jutting out of the ocean is seriously breathtaking, and exploring the little town and monastery itself takes you back in time. Well, that's it for this video. Leave me a comment and subscribe if you liked it.